Hey, this is Chad with Drawn and Cornered. I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about an effect that I'm noticing that's occurring specifically in all of these examples on the left, but I believe it's something that probably translates or at least transfers to both sides, something that is an issue that we're dealing with broadly across all spectrums of conversation. The instances that I'm going to highlight here, though, happen to be some of the most informative about what's going on. And I'm talking a little bit about the sense that hyperbolic speech has become now fixed to fact or truth in a way that I don't believe it ever was before. There was an understanding that there was boisterous and brash people that were out there that would say things that weren't necessarily true. A lot of times these people were fringe elements, and it seems more and more that is becoming not only the mainstream, but a necessary element of the mainstream in order to be able to garner attention and viewpoints. And I think a lot of this is our fault. And hopefully once I tell you about some of these circumstances, we can talk a little bit about how we can prevent this and how we can fix this. The first one that I'm going to bring up, which I think is really pretty spectacular, was from Kamala Harris, a potential 2020 candidate, or at least she's been kind of putting feelers out there to see if that's a possibility. And her claim that she tweeted out about Judge Kavanaugh talking about forms of contraception being abortion-inducing drugs, leading people to believe that contraception broadly might be something that is affected by a Kavanaugh appointment, that he considers it an abortion if you're having any sort of contraception that you're using. Again, the crazy thing about this is that would be a claim that could at least be discussed. That's something that you could talk about. That's something that you could deal with. But that's not what he even said. He said that abortion-inducing drugs was something that a client of his was proposing. In the actual quote, he said, "They said abortion-inducing drugs," and she completely left that portion out. She left out the portion, the context that this is something that he was repeating from somebody else, because she knew that once she tweeted this out, this would be something that would incense her side. This would be something that would rile people up and get them motivated. It was days later that she ended up pulling it back and changing the tweet. And the problem is, though, is that you can believe that she didn't know that this tweet was out of context and that would change the meaning dramatically. But I don't think that's the case. I think she knew full well what she was doing. She knew that she was putting this out that would be incendiary, and that people would buy it and run with it and create a much worse picture of what Kavanaugh could be than what that actual picture is. Another potential 2020 candidate, Maxine Waters, was talking to, again, supporters in California and saying how the quote that she put out a while back about how Trump supporters should be harassed and followed in stores and gas stations and told that you don't belong here, we don't want you here, and how that was immediately hammered as her threatening Trump supporters. And she said I wasn't threatening Trump supporters. She says, I do it all the time, but just not in that specific instance, to great laughter from her crowd. But what she's saying is again, wildly terrifying to have a public official say, I threaten Trump supporters all the time, and laughing about it. That's the sort of thing that, if this is ginning up your base, you need to pay attention to what your base is doing. I understand at this point the common argument against me would be that Trump does this all the time. Trump talks about hitting protesters and talks about paying legal bills and mocks people ruthlessly sometimes. And I agree. I think that stuff is the worst version of what politics can be. And as I said at the beginning, this issue is not just a left and right issue. The reason why I'm categorizing it in this way with lefties specifically is because this has to do with the 2020 election and where I see us going. But please do not take me out of context here. Please do not misunderstand me. This is across the board, and it is our responsibility to make this change, which we'll get to as well. The third one is Cory Booker's I Am Spartacus moment. Again, another 2020 candidate. He was in front of Kavanaugh at the hearings and said that he was going to release information that was previously private, previously confidential. It had been released that morning, so what he was doing was really inconsequential. But he made a big show of it. He made a big dramatic moment that he was a martyr of some sort for releasing this information when nobody else would, and he was the only one that was doing right by the people. It's important to remember all of these things in their specifics, but also once we're finished, we will group them all together, and I will show you why there's a commonality running through all of these. The last one is when Andrew Cuomo came forward and was talking at a speech again of supporters and mocking Trump and saying, "Make America Great Again." And Andrew Cuomo came forward and said America was never that great, and started highlighting suffrage and the Civil Rights Act and 1,000 things in our history that would lead you to believe that maybe America wasn't always an ideal circumstance or an ideal situation for people, which I don't know that there's a whole lot of people out there arguing that America's been perfect from day one. There are elements of it that make it unique, that make it a great place, and I would say have been great since day one. But it is not everything. There are, of course, failings all across the way. But this is not the important point. Getting down to the minutia on each one of these points seems kind of ridiculous because the claims themselves are a little bit insane. The reason why I bring these up, and the reason why it's imperative for you to understand this, is because as we march towards 2020, you'll notice that a lot of these candidates that are throwing hats in the ring, or at least testing the waters and kind of seeing what the possibility is for a presidential run, are testing things out like this, are saying things like America was never that great, or I threaten Trump supporters all the time, or intentionally taking people out of context because they're checking for soft spots. They're checking for areas where we as the supporters, we as the people, discount facts or context or truth and are willing to just buy into inflammatory language. If we're willing to buy into a mob mentality and a get them sort of version of politics. And I think that we need to be very cognizant of the fact that this is happening, because it's not something that was traditionally happening before. It was tamped down. It was quieter. Our news media often did a great job of covering things like that and holding their feet to the fire. And it seems to be happening less and less, which means that our responsibility is increasing significantly. I find that one of the best things that you can do is that when you see a quote or a meme or a news story that's coming across your Facebook wire, your Twitter wire, or a friend says this, or even something that you see on CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, and it sounds like there's a clear good guy and bad guy, check it out. Because more often than not, there's not evil villains out there. I don't believe that Kamala Harris or Maxine Waters or Cory Booker are bad people. I think they're doing what is going to be necessary to gain the public's attention to win a 2020 election. I think it's an element of politics that Trump brought to the fore and has been wildly successful with, and people are following in his path. There's no longer the opportunity to sit down and have dialogue. There's no longer an opportunity to have nuance. And I would argue a lot of that has to do with the fact that we as a nation are no longer paying attention to nuance. We want a villain. We want somebody that we can say, that guy right there, he's the bad guy. He's the reason that we have the problems that we have. It's not left and right working together to find a compromise that sits in the middle where most of America does, and that's probably the most reasonable solution as opposed to either of the fringe sides. We're pulling into fringes. We're pulling in opposite directions so that the farther I go to the right, I can hate more people on the left. And the farther I go to the left, the more I can hate everybody on the right, because they're so removed from what I want. They're so removed from what I think is the proper way of being that they must be evil for thinking that way, as opposed to running this center line that yeah, you may believe in a slightly different version of what I want than I do. So that doesn't make you insane. It just makes you having a different opinion. This is no longer the way things are going to be working. And as we move out of 2018 and as the midterms happen and apparently get pretty vitriolic, you're going to see 2020 get worse and worse. I remember talking about this with people before, and if you think 2016's election was rough, if you think that was a meat grinder, 2020 is gonna blow your mind. And the important thing to remember in all this, because there's going to be hysterics, there's going to be the sky is falling mentalities coming from all of these people, is you have to keep your head on straight. You have to make sure that you're understanding that it isn't this black and white. It isn't this clear. There isn't an evil side and a good side. And when people are trying to poke you with a stick and light fires beneath you, you need to recognize that the evil is coming from behind you and not from in front of you where they're pointing. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Drawn and Cornered. We have a podcast that comes out probably about weekly that you can check out on iTunes if you want to. We take emails at drawnandcornered at gmail.com. If you have any questions or suggestions for us, we would love to hear from you. If you like what you saw here, if you'd like to hear more about the politics that are coming up through 2018 and 2020, I know that you're getting a lot of it in other places, but here you're going to get some straight talk. You're going to get some distilling of all the nonsense that's going on out there, and hopefully a little bit of self-reflection as well, because everybody has a confirmation bias. Everybody has an idea of what they want to hear and likes being reinforced along those ends. We're going to challenge some of those beliefs. We're going to give you some things that you're not going to get from other stations that are solely built to surround echo chambers. We're going to push beyond that. So if you like what you're seeing, if you'd like to see more, please subscribe, like this video, send it out to a friend that you think might get something out of it, or even somebody that might hate it. We applaud those as well. If you have any questions for us, please feel free to reach out to us at Drawn and Cornered. That's Drawn, A-N-D, at cornered.com, or excuse me, gmail.com, and we'll answer anything that you've got there. Thanks for listening. Have a good one.